Okay, this is my presentation over the effectiveness of the sex offender registry. Okay, let's begin. All right, so I chose this topic because over the summer, as I was working, I really was intrigued by the true crime podcast available for me. And I listened to one. It was called In the Dark, and they brought up the sex offender registry. Well, it was the case of Jacob Weatherling that had been unsolved for 20 years, and so a group of girls went and talked to many people that was involved with the case, and yeah, so that's why I chose this subject. It was very interesting to me, and I felt like I knew a little bit something about it, so I liked it. So let's get into it. Prior research, the Jacob Weatherling Act, which was established in 1994, which Jacob was abducted, that was killed by a local sex offender. This case took over 27 years to find out who the killer was or where the little boy was. He was just missing. Which during that time, his mom, Patty Weatherling, formed a foundation that lobbied Congress to require all sex offenders to be registered. In 1996, Megan's Law was from the seven-year-old girl who was assaulted by her next door neighbor, who was like a convicted sex offender. And this incident required law enforcement to have information, law enforcement and the city to have information about the registry. Next was the Pam Lyncher Sex Offender Registry and Sex Offender Tracking and Identification law, which the FBI founded a database so that people can log on and view the sex offender registry and find out where these offenders are living and all that. In 2006, SORNA was required for all 50 states to have a registry. Yeah. I don't know how to change it. Okay, so my three hypotheses was that the study will predict that all the general population of the study will agree that the sex offender law is a great tool for the country. My second hypothesis was that the parents of victims will significantly display that they believe that the sex offender law is a great tool. And then my third hypothesis is some parents will show that they don't even use or are aware of the registry. My sample was an online survey that I posted on social media, Facebook. I ended up having like 213 people participate, 186 parents or 84 parents. I posted it on my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. People shared it. My parents shared it. Some of my family members shared it, and a lot of people participated just from, word of mouth or, saying, just, do my family members survey for her class, and which was great. So I had 10 control variable questions and then 10 dependent variable questions. So my control variable questions were like age, race, gender. The most important question was, are you a parent? And the next question was like, how many kids live in that household? Do you live next to a school? Where do you live? Are you aware of the Sex Offender Registry Act? Have you ever viewed the sex offender registration? And are you a parent of a child who has been sexually abused, which sets the parents apart from the focus group and the general population. My dependent variables was questions like, do you believe that all sex offenders are dangerous? Will the sex offender registration decrease the likelihood of offenders reoffending? Should sex offenders lose their civil rights? Should sex offenders be punished more severely? Are sex offenders required to, should the sex offender requirements be more restrictor? Is rehabilitation for sex offenders a waste of time? Should child sex offender be punished more severely? Knowing the whereabouts of offenders will lower children's likelihood of being victimized, and should offenders spend their whole time in prison? And lastly, is the sex offender registry an effective tool? My note. Yeah. So for my my analysis part, I did 5 tests of one dependent and one control variable. For my first test, I did, do you believe the sex offender registry will decrease the likelihood of reoffending? And my control variable was, are you a parent of a sexually offended child? Are you a parent of a sexually offended child? Yeah. So on this one, I got like 37.1% of my parents without sexual abuse children said that they believe that the sex offender registry will decrease the likelihood of reoffending. 50% of the parents with sexually victimized children strongly disagreed with the statement. And this, yeah. So test 2 was, should sex offender registries requirement be more strict? And my control variable was, are you aware of the sex offender registry and notification act and its requirements? On this test, I got 50% of my parents strongly agreed that the requirements should be more strict. 83 of parents who weren't aware of the SORNA requirements believe that the registration requirements should be more strict, which is puzzling to me because you're not aware of already what they have to do or what they're required to do. And a lot of my population said that they believe that they should be stricter, which, yeah. So test 3. Test 3 was child sex offenders should be punished more severely than other sex offenders. And then, are you a parent of a victim who has been sexually offended, which is my control variable. Of course, for my test 3, I got 38.8% of parents with sexually offended children believe that they should be punished more severely, strongly agree that sex offenders should be punished more severely. I got 44.59% of my general population agree that children sex offenders should be punished more severely, which kind of ties into my hypothesis one, which everyone, like all my general population and my focus group, believe that everyone that the act is a great tool, effective tool for our country. My test number 4, people who commit sex offenders should lose their civil rights. And my control variable was what options below describes your gender. 22.42% of my women strongly agreed that offenders should lose their civil rights, which is the rights to voting, privacy, yada yada. And 20% of the male believe that the sex offenders should lose their rights, which there are usually more men sex offenders than women. But yeah, so on my test 5, I did child sex offenders should be punished more severely than other sex offenders. Are you a parent of a sexually victim kid? For my policy and recommendations, for showing the effectiveness of the registration, I believe that many people just have negative thoughts towards sex offenders as a whole. They have a low tolerance for the label of being a sex offender. People don't really realize the requirements of these individuals. Like the 59% of the studies show that they have actually viewed the registry, and 36.72, which is a great amount of people, who said they have never used the sex offender registry, which is available for us free, which is weird because you can't. How can you just? Yeah, I don't know, but that's just my references, and that's my presentation.